On the night I turned 35, my husband gave my birthday gift to another woman. In our living room. In front of everyone. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet wife and became the woman who tore the mask off a perfect marriage. If you think you've seen Betrayal, you haven't seen anything yet. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day when I could revel in the joy of another year of life, surrounded by the people I loved. My 35th birthday seemed like the perfect occasion, a gathering in our spacious living room, decorated in a way that felt both elegant and cozy, the soft hum of conversation mixing with the clink of champagne glasses. Yet, it was in that moment, amidst the laughter and the clamor, that the life I had carefully built came crumbling down. Trevor, my husband of 12 years, stood before me, a small velvet jewelry box in his hands. I stared at him, my heart sinking. It wasn't just any birthday gift. It was a necklace, a vintage sapphire, one I had pointed out to him in the antique store just a month ago. But what took me completely off guard wasn't the gift, it was the fact that he was handing it to Caroline, his colleague, right there in front of everyone, including our closest friends and family. It took a moment for my mind to process what I was seeing. I felt like the room had frozen, everyone holding their breath. Caroline, her fingers perfectly manicured, took the box from him as if it were a perfectly normal exchange. My stomach churned, the champagne glass in my hand trembling uncontrollably. I had no idea how to react. My voice, however, stayed steady as I forced out, "Trevor, honey, what's that?" The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline's delighted smile was a slap in the face, and Trevor's guilty expression made my blood run cold. "It's just a small token of appreciation for all her help with the Anderson account," Trevor stammered, his face flushed with embarrassment. My sister Simone's voice sliced through the tension, sharp as a knife. "On your wife's birthday," she demanded, her gaze cutting straight through Trevor. She stepped closer to me, her hand resting on my shoulder as if offering a lifeline. I could feel the world shifting beneath me. Caroline opened the box. "It's gorgeous," she whispered, lifting the necklace from its velvet bed. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I stayed frozen in place. My brother Riley spoke next, his voice tinged with disbelief. "That's quite a token." It wasn't just the betrayal of the gift. It was everything. The act itself was a quiet declaration of what had been happening behind my back for months, maybe longer. The lie had festered in the shadows, and now, it was exposed in the most public of ways. This wasn't just about the necklace. This was about trust being shattered in a room full of people who had no idea what was really going on beneath the surface. I watched the smug smile on Caroline's face, the nervous fidgeting of Trevor's hands, and the shocked faces of our friends and family. A knot of fury tied itself in my chest. I could feel the anger building inside me, but there was no room for emotion now. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about something much deeper. The lies. The manipulation. The way Trevor had betrayed not only me but everything we had built together. I looked around the room, taking in the stunned faces of our guests. I was no longer the woman who would quietly tolerate his actions, hiding behind the mask of a perfect wife. This was my breaking point. "You can keep the necklace, Caroline," I said, my voice cutting through the stillness, "but you should know he promised me that same one last month." The room was still. The air was thick with tension. What had been an evening of celebration had turned into a moment of reckoning. There was no going back now. Everything had changed. The room had gone eerily silent, the moment of betrayal hanging thick in the air. I stood there, numb, watching Trevor hand the velvet box to Caroline, my heart dropping with each passing second. It wasn't just a gift, it was a declaration. A statement of everything I had feared but refused to acknowledge. It was happening, right before my eyes, in front of everyone I had ever trusted. And all I could do was stand there, frozen. I had always prided myself on having a perfect life, the kind that was carefully curated for social media, the kind that looked flawless from the outside. My house, my marriage, the way we seemed to have it all together. But in that instant, the polished facade crumbled, and I saw the truth behind it all, the secrets, the lies, the betrayal. Trevor wasn't just handing over a necklace, he was handing over the end of everything we had built. I had never imagined this day, my 35th birthday, would be the day my marriage imploded, but there it was. His actions felt like a slap in the face, his guilt and her smirk the final blow. Caroline, his colleague, stood there with the necklace in her hand, as if she hadn't just violated everything I held dear. Her fingers, poised and elegant, were the antithesis of the chaos bubbling inside me. But it was Trevor's face that haunted me the most, flushed, guilty, trying to justify the unjustifiable. The room fell into a heavy silence. My mind raced. Was this really happening? Could I have missed the signs all this time? Was our entire life together nothing more than an illusion? Questions spun around my head, but I couldn't seem to focus on any of them. I was aware only of the sting in my chest, the tightness of my throat, and the way the words escaped my lips without permission. It's just a small token of appreciation, Trevor mumbled, his voice faltering. His attempt to downplay the situation only made it worse. A token of appreciation? For what? Helping him lie? Helping him betray me? The anger surged within me, but I held it back. I wasn't going to let him see how deeply this cut me. Not yet. Instead, I focused on Caroline, the woman standing before me, proudly displaying the very necklace I had admired just weeks ago. "It's gorgeous," she whispered, lifting it from its velvet nest. I could feel the burning heat of betrayal rising inside me. Simone, my sister, wasn't as composed. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "On your wife's birthday?" she demanded. The words were laced with disbelief and outrage. The question hung in the air, the sharpness of her tone a stark contrast to the calmness I was desperately trying to maintain. Everything around me felt surreal. Riley, my brother, his voice tinged with contempt, commented on the audacity of the gesture. "That's quite a token," he said, his gaze fixed on Trevor and Caroline. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I held my ground. I felt the weight of their eyes on me, family, friends, the people who were supposed to have my back. But it was the eyes of Trevor that I couldn't escape. The shame in his gaze was palpable, but it was too late. This wasn't something I could forgive, not anymore. I was done pretending. This was the final straw. The moment I had waited for, but never wished for, had arrived. It wasn't just the affair, it was the betrayal of everything we had built. I looked around the room, at the faces of those who had unknowingly become witnesses to my unraveling. "You can keep the necklace, Caroline," I said, my voice steady but filled with an emotion I could no longer hide. "But you should know, he promised me that same one last month." There was no turning back now. The truth was out in the open, and everything had changed. The confrontation was inevitable. The truth, long buried under layers of lies and deceit, had come crashing into the open. Savannah's mind was still reeling from the betrayal, but she knew what needed to be done. Her heart, torn and raw, had been shattered by Trevor's actions, but now, her resolve was unwavering. Trevor's face flushed with guilt as he tried to explain away the unexplainable. The necklace, a symbol of their broken trust, dangled between them like a bitter reminder of everything he had kept hidden. His stammered excuses fell on deaf ears, but it wasn't just about the necklace. It was about the years of deceit, the affair with Caroline, and the lies he had woven around their lives. This wasn't just betrayal of love, it was betrayal of family, of everything they had built together. Savannah stood firm. The anger she felt was palpable, but it was the overwhelming sense of clarity that cut through it all. She was done being the victim. This wasn't just a moment of personal loss, it was an awakening. The woman who had been the perfect wife, the dutiful partner, was no longer hiding behind a smile. The truth had torn through the facade, and Savannah had finally come to understand that she wasn't powerless in this situation. She had the strength to take back control. Her confrontation with Trevor was a turning point. She didn't just call him out for his infidelity, she exposed the web of lies he had been spinning. The affair wasn't the only secret. Trevor had been involved in financial fraud, embezzling money from his company, and worse yet, dragging others into his deceit. Savannah wasn't going to be silent anymore. She wasn't going to stand idly by as he destroyed their lives. The family dynamics in the room shifted as Savannah took the reins. Her sister Simone, her pillar of support, stood by her side, fiercely protective of her. Riley, her brother, added his voice, calling out Trevor's audacity. But it wasn't just family. Savannah could feel the weight of the support from her friends, too. Cameron and Yell, ever the loyal companions, flanked her like bodyguards, ready to back her up in whatever came next. And then, there was the turning point. Savannah's words were a declaration, not just to Trevor, but to herself. She didn't need his approval anymore. She didn't need his excuses. She had seen enough, and the truth was far more powerful than any lie he could spin. With quiet determination, she made her decision. The divorce was happening. She was done pretending that everything was fine when, in reality, she had been living a lie. As the room slowly began to process what had just unfolded, the realization settled in: this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Savannah wasn't merely a woman scorned, she was a woman empowered by the truth, ready to take the next step. And as she left that night, she carried with her the strength to move on, to rebuild, and to find the life she deserved. What came next? The legal battle was just beginning. But Savannah was ready. She knew that the road ahead would be tough, but she was prepared to fight. After all, the truth had set her free, and now, it was time to see Trevor face the consequences of his actions. The courtroom buzzed with tension. It was the final stage of Savannah's journey, a battle for her dignity, her truth, and the future she so desperately needed to reclaim. The evidence was laid bare, each document, each testimony, exposing Trevor's web of lies. His betrayal was not just emotional, it was criminal. Savannah had unearthed more than just an affair. She had revealed a financial fraud scheme that would ensure Trevor's downfall. Her heart pounded, but there was a calmness she had never known before. The support of her family, who stood with her in the courtroom, gave her the strength to face this final confrontation. Simone, ever the protective sister, sat at her side, while Riley's unwavering presence was a quiet force. Even though the courtroom felt cold, the warmth of their support wrapped around her, fortifying her resolve. The legal battle had been long, but it wasn't just a fight for justice, it was a fight for closure. Savannah wasn't just seeking to end her marriage, she was fighting to heal, to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her. The confrontation had been difficult, yes, but it had given her a clarity she had never anticipated. She was no longer a victim of Trevor's deceit, she had become the author of her own story. As the judge deliberated, Savannah felt a quiet hope surge within her. This was the moment she had dreamed of, when the truth would be heard and Trevor would face the consequences of his actions. There was no more fear, no more hesitation. Her future, once clouded by doubt and betrayal, was now a blank page she was ready to fill with her own dreams. The verdict was delivered, and Savannah exhaled. It wasn't just legal justice that had been served, it was a personal victory. But even more than that, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Trevor's lies had been exposed, and Savannah's strength had been reaffirmed. She was moving forward, and nothing would stand in her way. With the courtroom now silent, Savannah took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride. The battle was over, but her journey was just beginning. Her life, once shattered, was now a masterpiece in the making. And she was the one holding the paintbrush. Savannah's heart pounded as the reality of the situation finally sank in. The legal proceedings, the courtrooms, and the confrontation with Trevor, all had led to this moment. The truth, however painful, had finally surfaced, and with it came the opportunity for closure. The lies, the deceit, the web of betrayal had been unraveled. But now, it was time to rebuild. The court's verdict was not just a judgment of Trevor's wrongdoings, it was the first step toward Savannah reclaiming her life and her identity. Family had been her anchor throughout this storm. Simone, Riley, her father Mark, they were there, standing beside her when everything seemed to be falling apart. Their unwavering support had given her the strength to confront her past and face the future with resolve. No longer burdened by the shame and hurt of Trevor's betrayal, Savannah could finally breathe, free from the chains of his lies. In the months following the trial, Savannah began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. It wasn't an easy road, but the experience had catalyzed her transformation. She found herself exploring new passions, diving into hobbies she'd once put aside. It was through these new experiences that she started to discover who she really was, independent of the identity she'd once tied to her marriage. Her journey was far from over. Each day brought a new challenge, but with every challenge came growth. Savannah learned to trust herself again, to believe that she could overcome whatever obstacles came her way. And, in doing so, she began to yield. This new chapter wasn't just about moving on from the past, it was about embracing the future with open arms, ready for whatever it held. Savannah had gone from a place of deep hurt and betrayal to a place of empowerment, reclaiming control over her life and destiny. And as she looked forward, she knew that her best days were yet to come.